の？
いきなり後ろからとは卑怯じゃないか。それが大人のすることかよ。
Making video games is hard, you guys. It's difficult enough to make something that's both functional and compelling for single player, meaning it's doubly so for a competitive multiplayer game. Dead by Daylight is beyond no exception, and coming up with a new killer power every 3 months is bound to bring about some duds. You tried coming up with not only killers, but also their powers and perks while making them stand out in some way while next to their peers. Shit ain't easy, I'm sure. To put it bluntly, some killers are just not that fun to play. Like, some are really boring. So boring that I often gloss over them in the roster when deciding who to play. Well, I picked out the 3 most boring to me personally. Fun is subjective, so you may not find these boring, but hopefully I can impress upon you just why I feel this way. Now, before we begin, I will say this is based on just their base powers, no meme builds allowed. Sorry Mouse One Nurse and Jumpscare Myers. Also, this video isn't saying whether or not they are bad killers. I'm also going to assume you know what each of these killers do, so I won't be explaining their power too much, only why I find them boring. With that being explained, let's dive in and see just which of these monstrous killers are too boring to even slay with.
Number 3. The Hag.
First up on our short list is a little hissy missy, the Hag. This killer is potentially the most overrated killer in the game. Everyone seems to think she's amazing, and she's not completely terrible, but she has so much counterplay that it's insane. While her traps are good for being in multiple places at once, this knowledge can be used to the survivor's advantage. It's not impossible to bait the traps out, triggering them just out of our dear Hag's range after a teleport, and heaven forbid if you teleport a second late, your target will be miles away. This counterplay can be abused even harder considering how many Hags play, by mashing the teleport button like their lives depend on it, as they may as well. Of course, this can cause a troublemaker to trigger traps just as you're about to catch someone, or while you're carrying a survivor, putting you on the ass end of the map with no traps while gens are just flying. Now, again, this video isn't about the killers being weak. And against your average team, Hag isn't exactly. It's just that all this counterplay, combined with how simple she is to play, makes her quite boring. She is similar in design to Trapper, only his traps aren't exactly as abusable. You can't trigger them, causing him to mess up. They can only be disarmed or stepped in. She at least can place hers wherever, which is more enjoyable than having to go pick the traps up, but Trapper isn't boring as real strategy is involved while placing his traps. With Hag, you draw on the ground everywhere and walk off, hoping you didn't put too many down and overwrite the trap protecting your precious Hex Totem, and praying to the entity that the survivors didn't bring flashlights, because they destroy her. Overall, the brain-dead simplicity of her power, combined with how easily she is countered, neutered even if flashlights are involved, makes her fairly boring to play. It's not fun being countered by everything on the planet, and so easily to boot. Imagine if every single instance of you interacting with the survivor via your power was trying to use Nemesis's whip at a loop, giving the survivors total immunity if they do something as simple as duck. That's playing Hag. She can snowball like a motherfucker, which is fun, but that is always fun regardless of what killer you're playing.
Number 2. The Hillbilly.
Now, I'll start by saying I have a personal grudge against this guy. I think he's massively flawed and overrated, and the devs just kept making him worse. Now, similarly to Hag, the Hillbilly is mostly here due to the limits of his power, as it is just used to cross great distances quickly. Sure, if you happen to hit someone, they dead, but that'll be increasingly rare as you go on playing. While it may seem fun practically driving around the map, your movement is severely limited when turning is involved, making the majority of the maps unplayable for our friendly neighborhood milkman, as bumping into things causes a massive time sink of a stun animation to play out. Not to mention how his power is useless in chase around anyone with decent game sense. That all being said, the main reason this guy is boring is because he feels bad to play. His jutting forward with his chainsaw feels bad. Trying to bait with the chainsaw just slows you down, increasing the chance of eating a pallet or god window, and that chainsaw is so damn loud! Seriously, why is it so damn loud? Whoever thought that was a good idea must be deaf themselves. That is almost unplayable, and that isn't even mentioning how the damn thing overheats. Yes, his power is gone from using it too much, which makes sense in theory, but with how hard it is to control, it's just adding insult to injury. Now, this is starting to sound like a different list. I'll get to that one eventually, but just know that Hillbilly is boring to play as he's incredibly simple and his power isn't feasible to be used in chase without getting lucky, virtually making him a mouse one killer with a high risk, low reward special attack and movement. Movement that is inferior to movement that came later. Also, as a side note, the footage you are seeing was not intentionally chosen. His power is just that easy to counter, but I'll save more on that for another video. Here he is, boys, the man of the hour, the most boring killer in Dead by Daylight, in my opinion. Now, to re-clarify, I am not saying he's bad here, just that he's goddamn boring to play. The Shape, aka Miguel Myers, has the least interesting power in the entire game, and that's saying something considering Ghostface is here. Now, unlike the others who are fairly easy to counter, causing them to be quite boring, Myers is here literally because it's such an uninteresting and uninteractive power. Sitting and staring might be fun to some people, but not to this serial slaughterer. Not only is it boring, his starting in Tier 1 makes him slow to even get started, forcing you to move slower with a limited attack range before you can even reach the power of a regular killer, something the survivors can, and will try to, drag out for long periods of time. He has stealth capabilities, this is true, but it doesn't make his power interesting or fun to play. Your strategy will boil down to 99ing Tier 3 and popping it in people's faces, hoping to snowball as much as possible before you return to being your typical Mouse 1. To top off how uninteresting Evil Within is, you can run out of it. If you happen to do your job too efficiently when it comes to stalking your foes and not efficiently enough when it comes to the killing, you can actually run out of juice, making Myers a Mouse 1 killer for the rest of the time. Not exactly my idea of fun. While in Tier 3, he can snowball fairly hard, but it's just mundane doing so. Maybe that's what they were going for with him, considering Myers himself is a purposely mundane killer in the source material. If so, he's been translated faithfully. Sadly, I think it's boring when the controller is in your hands. He can do some strong things with the right setup and perks, but it's like admiring a blank canvas in an art museum. Such a shame for such an iconic killer. In that, My Killers and Weaker Killers is my pick for top 3 most boring killers to play. These 3 have varying degrees of strength, or lack thereof, in the meta, but beyond that, they are just dull to play. Spamming a power button hoping to score some hits, pointlessly traveling to gen hoping to get the sweet suckle of an insta-down, or staring at survivors like the teenager who got stuffed in a locker in the girls' locker room just isn't interesting in the slightest. To top it off, all three have some of the easier powers to counter, with only Myers being slightly difficult to starve. Deny him his sweet perverted evil and he becomes a mouse one killer with a reduced terror radius. Of course, in a game of 28 killers, you are bound to get some you find boring, and these are just my opinion as mentioned. I am sure there are some that I find fun that you don't, and you may even find these three fun. It's funny how opinions work and all that. That being said, what would your three choices be? Hook them in the comments and I'll chime in and see them. It's interesting to see just who I annoy when I decide to roll into the fog as Legion for the billionth time. Besides myself, that is. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, I upload reviews, the odd Let's Play, daily multiplayer videos, and plan on doing more Dead by Daylight videos similar to this one. Check them out, you might find some content you enjoy. Until the next video, I'll see you in the fog. Hopefully not as a killer you find boring. Or hopefully as, if you're into that kind of thing. My knife arm swings both left and right in this instance, so it won't matter when you're on the hook. Or teabagging in the exit gates.